One of the most killer things in startups is working on the wrong ideas for a really long time. And it's so easy to do it. That's why you lose so much time on it. There are countless stories of people who work on the wrong ideas. And I feel like recently I've spent way too much time on some ideas that I now look back on and see they were terrible ideas because they didn't part from a good problem and whatever else. And I can go into that. Startups are really hard because you have to strike a balance. On the one hand, you have to keep working on things to discover more. You have to keep pulling on a thread to discover more problems. But it's such a common failure to work on terrible ideas for a really long time. That's where 90% of people, I think, lose the most time. I'm also not going to tell you that you shouldn't do startups, if you don't find success in a few years, because it takes years to make things work, right? Like, that image of like the guy with the pickaxe mining and like he stops right before he hits the diamonds. I'm not going to tell people not to do startups because of that, because I think it takes years to figure things out. But the reason people take longer than they want is usually when they are not super deliberate about killing ideas fast. Killing ideas fast, I think, is like what sometimes more experienced founders know how to do better. And I'm saying this as like somebody who's observing it, somebody who maybe has not done that fast enough, right? Come up with an idea and try to test it really, really fast. This is like basic, I think, pretty common startup advice, but not heeded very often. Like the communities thing, I think was a terrible idea. Not because everything was wrong with it, but because I couldn't tell you the problem in a simple way. And I couldn't tell you what the product was in a simple way. And I think like I should have worked on the question of how can I kill this idea the fastest. I should have worked on that like really purposefully to find a very, very good answer to that. And I don't think I did that. And that's like, I think one of the recent mistakes that I've observed myself making. And I think this is very understandable, but it is one of the most common pitfalls. I saw a LinkedIn post not too long ago about a guy who spent 7.5 years working on a Techstars startup. The problem with startups is like, it's a lot like gambling, where you just want to take one more shot. You just want one more spin. It's always like the success is it's just right there. It's right around the corner. It's just one more year. It's just one more thing, one more step, one more day, one more whatever. And that is the mentality that you need. That's the problem. Like that's the mentality that you need to win because you got to do this for a long time. However, that's also the mentality that can get you to waste a lot of time. And walking this tightrope is one of the hardest things you got to do. Those two ideas, like they're opposing and they're both true. And this is why I think the best advice is not like do this or do that. Truthfully, it's pretty complicated and it's one of those like crappy it depends answers. I think everything in business is about managing dichotomies. There are two things. They're both true and they both go against each other. You got to keep working on something for a really long time and make it work, but also you got to kill things fast and move on. Cut your losses. Like if you see something's not working in 6 months or 12 months, leave. Don't waste 2 years on that. Don't waste 3 years on that. There are people who waste 2, 3, 4, 5 years. For example, I made an angel investment. So I invested in a startup a few years ago and I watched the founder work on this idea, which by the way, I realized was terrible. Like right after the investment and the product came out, like the product came out, it was like Slack with AI summaries. It was not a differentiation. It was not a sufficiently differentiated feature from Slack or Discord or things like that. It was useless. And the guy spent 3 or 4 years of his life working on this. It was such a waste of time. And I was seeing that from the outside. Like this product was dead. And of course, it's great that he kept trying, but like he wasn't changing his approach. He launched and then it failed and it flopped. And I think he tried to make the product a little bit better and he couldn't recruit a CTO. And like, it wasn't working. And that was an example of like, stop, like 12 months in, if you're not getting traction, you're not making progress, you're not having momentum, don't waste your time. But then on the other hand, you also need that mentality of like, oh, Figma took, however many years to find the product market fit. That's also true. And so two opposing ideas, both true, and you got to manage them somewhere in the middle. By the way, the reason I bring up that investment is because he failed. He just closed his company. He ran out of money and he gave up. If you want to get there faster, right? So number one, you do have to be willing to try for years. But number two, if you want to move faster, if you want to actually get to the end goal faster without wasting, 10 or 15 years along the way, you got to know how to kill ideas fast. That's a super valuable skill. And I don't have a cheat sheet on how to do it because I haven't done it. Well, I haven't done it like loads of times. Obviously, I haven't even built that many companies. There's probably great advice about this from YC partners and other like much more experienced, especially VCs, right? Because they see a lot of things. Although you don't also want to take like advice from VCs all the time because they don't know about the market the way you do, or at least they shouldn't. Right? You should know more about your market than your VCs. I don't know. I think this idea is great. I wasted weeks like working on a crappy idea. I could have moved faster. Fail as fast as you can. That's great advice. That's terribly hard to follow. maybe this video is a reminder for you if you're, in that position. I hope this is useful. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments. Yeah, hope it's an interesting thought. At least it was on my mind.